Hello, I'm Kevin Boyer, Assistant Coach of the National Skeleton Program. This is my gold medal profile presentation for Kin515 Gap Analysis. First, we will take a look at the Canadian Sport for Life long-term athlete development pathway and how it relates to Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton's National Skeleton Program. The current NSP athlete development pathway framework is focused on the excellent stages of high performance component of the LTAD. The key stage for developing athletes in the NSP is the train to compete stage. Early entry athletes will be developing from within the sport of skeleton. However, most of the NSP athletes are late entry athletes who have developed outside of the sport. Because of this, some older age athletes will have to briefly enter the developing stages, such as learn to train in the LTAD. Now we take a look at the relationship between the Canadian Sport for Life and the NSP's athlete development stages in relation to the gold medal profile. As mentioned on the previous slide, the National Skeleton Program focuses on development in the train to compete stage. Here we can see that this includes the learn to compete stage, which is 8 to 6 years away from a gold medal performance. The athlete will move down the pathway into the train to compete, which is 6 to 4 years away from gold medal performance. Athletes will then move into the train to win stage, which is 4 years before the gold medal performance expectations. The number of years away is used as a guideline, since athletes progress at different rates. When athletes achieve these performance components in one stage, they would then have the ability to progress into the next stage. This is critical to athlete development in the sport of skeleton. Currently, the National Skeleton Program's gold medal profile focuses on 4 areas that develop the whole athlete for long-term success. These include physical, psychological, technical, and tactical parameters. The gold medal profile for the NSP currently puts emphasis on the train to compete and train to win stages. With the National Skeleton Program's continued growth, this presentation will aim to provide a gold medal profile for the learn to compete stage of the LTAD in alignment with the train to compete and train to win stages for athletes who are entering the excellence stage of the LTAD. In the sport of skeleton, athletes will begin their journey on the LTAD in the learn to train stage. This stage includes the skeleton driving school. Once athletes graduate the driving school, they enter the train to train stage where they will continue to learn to slide. When the athlete enters international competition on the IBSF development tours, they enter the learn to compete stage of the LTAD, identified as 8 to 6 years away from a podium result. Once these athletes progress into the learn to compete stage, they will learn to consistently execute steers under pressure and get introduced to varying levels of competition, including local races, Canadian championships, and the IBSF development tours. This season, the National Skeleton Program has bolstered our recruiting efforts and introduced 25 new athletes to the National Skeleton Program. Of these 25 recruits, 12 athletes have made their international competition debuts, some with only 3 weeks of sliding experience. With a high number of athletes entering the learn to compete stage, the NSP can further its efforts in development to develop a gold medal profile for this stage. This will help the NSP identify athletes who meet the gold medal profile parameters to advance their development in the train to compete stage. As mentioned, this presentation will outline a gold medal profile for the NSP's learn to compete stage in alignment with the gold medal profile parameters, physical, psychological, technical, and tactical, to develop the athlete for long-term success. We will start with the physical parameters of the gold medal profile. These include anthropometric, strength and power, elastic strength, speed, and push time. Our first physical parameter is the anthropometric. Skeleton is a gravity-dependent sport. Max weight combined is 120 kilograms for men and 102 kilograms for women. The minimum weight of a skeleton sled is approximately 26 kilograms. An athlete's height can contribute to aerodynamics. Both of these are measured in kilograms and centimeters. These measurements take place twice a year and do not get measured in the Train to Win profile. This is used for athletic profiling purposes to track the athlete's physical growth in the sport. The strength and power parameters are relevant to skeleton by displaying the maximum amount of force exerted, regardless of body size. This is an indicator of explosive power and start potential. There are 2 tests completed in this parameter, the first being a 1 rep max standard power clean with a max weight of 140 kilograms for men and 90 kilograms for women. The second test will be a 1 rep standard front squat with the maximum weight limit of 180 kilos for men and 140 kilos for women. Both of these tests happen twice a year, including the first testing camp and at the beginning of the season. In the Train to Win category, elite level athletes will have max power clean between 120 and 140 kilograms for men and 86 to 100 kilograms for women. When developing the Learn to Compete parameters, we used 80 to 100 kilos for men and 65 to 75 kilos for women. The numbers between the Train to Win and Learn to Compete stage are represented in the Train to Compete stage. Athletes in the Learn to Compete stage are new to the sport and relatively new to training and do not have the athletic experience or strength to be able to lift in the Train to Win stage. This is the same for the 1 rep max front squat, where athletes in the Learn to Compete stage will be expected to front squat 100 to 119 kilos for men and 65 to 85 kilos for women. The goal is to develop these athletes to get to the Train to Win stage, where they will eventually be able to front squat and clean in the Train to Win parameters. Moving to the elastic strength physical parameter, the relevance to skeleton is having faster and more powerful movements indicates the potential to initiate and move the sled at the skeleton start. In the physical parameter, we have 2 tests, both measured in meters. The first test is an underhand med ball throw with a weight of 5 kilograms for men and 4 kilograms for women. The second test is a standing long jump. In the underhand med ball throw, athletes will hold the ball with both hands in front of their body and immediately throw the ball forward as far as they can in one motion. Athletes in the Learn to Compete stage will be expected to throw 11.5 to 14.49 meters for men and 9.5 to 12.49 meters for women. In the standing long jump, athletes will be expected to jump 2.8 to 2.99 meters for men and 2.5 to 2.74 for women. As athletes gain more exposure to the physical training demands required in skeleton, they will aim to develop and improve these distances in the Train to Win category. Next is the speed parameter. This provides insight on the athlete's general acceleration and overall times. This is measured in seconds, and the testing protocol is a 30-meter sprint using light gates. We will test this 2 times a year, including the beginning of testing camp and at the beginning of the season. In order for an athlete to be considered in the Learn to Compete stage, they must run below 3.90 seconds for men, 4.20 seconds for women. If the athlete does not demonstrate these times, they will struggle to be successful in the push start of a skeleton competition. As the athlete matures and continues to grow, we aim to see that these sprint times turn into elite levels in the Train to Win stage. The greatest key performance indicator for skeleton is the start interval, or the push phase of a skeleton run. This is the only opportunity in a race where an athlete can accelerate the sled with their own power. There is a strong correlation with the start and finish time, and much of these athletes' training is to improve this phase of the race. The NSP evaluates the ability and potential to achieve an elite skeleton start. We have 2 testing protocols to measure push time. Using the Ice House Push Facility in Calgary, Alberta, the athlete will perform a skeleton push from the front block position. Athletes pushing in the front block position in the Learn to Compete stage will be expected to push 4.90 seconds or faster for men and 5.30 seconds or faster for women. In the same push test, velocity will be measured in kilometers an hour after the load phase. Velocity and start time indicates the ability to generate or lose speed in the upper corners of a track. Athletes with velocities higher than 43 kilometers an hour for men and 40 kilometers an hour for women show potential to generate speed for the skeleton run. The second test is a skeleton push from the back block position. The back block allows for a longer acceleration period before the timing eye. With this extra space for acceleration, the times are 1/10 of a second faster compared to the front block, as well as 0.5 kilometer an hour faster in velocity. Understanding and awareness shape the decision-making of the athlete while piloting the sled in track. Athletes must have a strong foundation and build their knowledge and understanding to stay calm and relaxed through the skeleton run. The technical parameters for skeleton include form and position, steering application, push time, and finish time. In skeleton, the optimal position is with 4 points of contact with the shoulders and knees to the sled. The athlete must attempt to remain in a neutral position while maintaining this contact with the sled, while applying the desired inputs. This is measured by coach observation of the frequency of errors in body position, sled angle, and the athlete's execution of their game plan. This is reviewed 3 times a year, including the preseason, midseason, and postseason evaluation. Athletes are scored on a scale of 0 to 6, with 6 being the highest. In the Learn to Compete category, the athlete can maintain an optimal and neutral body position for most of the run, with some or little separation of the shoulders. Steering the skeleton sled is achieved through inputting forces on the sled through the shoulders and knees, as well as directly into the ice with the athlete's feet. The appropriate technical application of these steers results in as little input as possible to allow for acceleration through the build of pressures within the curve. This measurement is also done through coach observation by observing the frequency and errors of body positioning, sled angles, and the execution of game plan. Steering is also evaluated on the 0 to 6 scale, where athletes in the Learn to Compete category scoring 6, the athlete can mostly make the appropriate steering application and technique strength timing around for maximum acceleration. In the Train to Win category, athletes scoring a 6 will have the athlete regularly make the appropriate steer application and technical strength timing to allow for maximum acceleration. Here we have included the push in our technical parameters as well as our physical. The push is the physical application of the sport, but in the technical parameter, it is only relevant to the split time. This also helps assess the performance aspect of the athlete. Start times represent a significant KPI in determining the result of a skeleton race. For the push time in the technical parameter, we will use the time from the leader in seconds and the difference calculated at the fastest starting split time. We use this 3 times per season in the preseason, midseason, and postseason evaluations. Athletes scored on a 0 to 6 scale, with athletes in Learn to Compete scoring a 6, having the starts in the top of the development race circuit field. Our final technical parameter is the finish time. Skeleton is measured to the 100th of a second. The athlete that crosses the finish line with the fastest combined time over 2 runs is declared the winner. For this measurement, we will calculate the percent back from the leader in seconds. That percent difference is calculated from the fastest finish time. This is reviewed 3 times a season. Athletes in the Learn to Compete stage scoring a 5 to a 6 will have a percent back from the leader less than 1% in the Learn to Compete stage. Athletes in Train to Win need to be 0.35% back from the leader, but given the inexperience of athletes in the Learn to Compete stage, they start seeing performance go under 1%. They will transition into the Train to Compete stage. Moving into our tactical parameters, we have curve theory, ice theory, track awareness, velocity, equipment setup, and run volume. The tactical parameter of curve theory is the understanding of the unique challenges and characteristics presented by a curve for each track. Steering is applied to navigate these characteristics, linking the track together. This is observable behavior with the engagement with the coaches during video and track walk discussions. Athletes are scored on a 0 to 6 scale, with athletes in the Learn to Compete stage scoring a 6 by engaging the coaches and demonstrating they understand the characteristics of the curve and its pressures. Ice theory is the comprehension of how the presented ice conditions will impact the decision making. This demonstrates the understanding to make appropriate adjustments to steering application and sled setups. This is observable behavior with the athlete's engagement with the coaches during video sessions and track walks. Athletes will be scored on a 0 to 6 scale, and athletes scoring a 6 in the Learn to Compete stage are engaging the coach and demonstrating the understandings of the characteristics of ice temperature and conditions. Track awareness is the comprehension of where the athlete is in the track, and the goal is to consistently remain in position. Coach's observation in the frequency of errors, body positioning, sled angles, and game plan execution. Athletes will be scored on a 0 to 6 scale, with an athlete scoring a 6 being able to have a complete recollection of their whole run and describe each corner entrance, exit, and location, as well as the sensations that they are feeling. Velocity is an indication of the total product of the slider and equipment, and a KPI in determining the athlete's tactical ability as a pilot. Used as a measurement in kilometers an hour, the difference from the leader is the percentile difference calculated from the 3 velocities on the track. An athlete scoring a 6 in the Learn to Compete stage will have speeds in the top of the field on development race circuits. Equipment setup is the understanding of the equipment and the appropriate adjustments for the track conditions. This is observable behavior based on the athlete's finish time. Athletes scoring a 6 in the Learn to Compete stage will understand how to maximize their equipment for performance by engaging with coaches and mechanics on the adjustments needed. The final tactical parameter is run volume. There is no run volume scoring in the Train to Win stage, but it is introduced in the Learn to Compete stage. Run volume helps in the development of the other tactical parameters. The minimum number of run volume for a season should be greater than 150 runs. This is observed by the total number of runs taken in a season. Athletes in Learn to Compete scoring a 6 will have completed over 90% of the runs available to them both in domestic and international training and competition. Moving to the psychological parameters, we have mental health and well-being, positive psychology, performance skills, and observable behavior. For mental health and well-being, we will be using the Sport and Mental Health Assessment 201 Self-Questionnaire Report. This was developed by the IOC for sport medicine physicians to assess elite athletes potentially at risk or experiencing mental health symptoms and disorders. Athletes in the Learn to Compete stage scoring greater than 17 will need further assessment with possible interventions. For positive psychology, the athletes will be using the GRIT survey. In 2007, Duckworth and colleagues defined grit as a non-cognitive trait that influences an individual's success and effectiveness through their commitment to long-term goals. The grit scale has 2 components, passion and perseverance. Duckworth says that individuals that have the ability to grow their grit through adapting a growth mindset. Athletes in the Learn to Compete stage scoring greater than a 3.4 grit display they have these non-cognitive skills and have potential to grow their grit to greater than 3.8 when they enter the Train to Win stage. In performance skills, we will use the Athletic Coping Skills Inventory Self-Questionnaire. The ACSI contains 7 sport-specific subscales: coping with adversity, peaking under pressure, goal setting and mental preparation, concentration, freedom from worry, confidence, achievement motivation, and coachability. This is measured to get an understanding of the current levels for psychological skills and training to match the mental demand of skeleton. In both the Learn to Compete and Train to Win stages, athletes will need to score above 10 in each of these subscales. These 3 parameters are monitoring tools for the athlete's psychological performance. We will be using observable behavior as the qualification measurement scored on the gold medal profile. These observable behaviors include focus, maintaining calm focus through an entire run; goal setting, creating a clear and realistic goals and the accountability to reevaluate them; debriefing performance, attending training with a growth mindset and the ability to evaluate new ideas in real time; planning, engages with the coaches and staff on their performance needs; training mindset, takes criticism well and doesn't react emotionally to poor training outcomes; performance mindset, focus on the performance outcome. These are scored on a 0 to 6 scale. For the athlete assessment, we have a 17-year-old male athlete who is in his first year of sliding. and is one of the 12 first-year sliders to make his international racing debut. This athlete is in the learn to compete stage of the LTAD. This athlete's primary strength is his push start, as he had the second fastest push time in the off-season testing camp. His primary weakness is his track awareness, and this is because he is in his first year of sliding. This athlete has competed in 4 races, all in Park City, Utah. These races are back-to-back events. The first 2 races were from November, and they included the U23 and U20 Junior Pan American Championships. In the first 2 races, this athlete had top 10 pushes in the 3 race heats he entered. We can see his percent back from the leader is high, but this is also the athlete's 3rd week of sliding. When we relate to his peer group and his age, his percent back is closer to the 2.5 range. He had 3 top 3 pushes in the junior competition. When he returned in January, we can see his improvement both in speeds and in percent back from the leader. This competition included the 2022 Olympic bronze medalist. Notable are his top speed increasing over 6 kilometers an hour faster and having a top 3 speed in the competition. We now score this athlete on the gold medal profile gap analysis in the learn to compete stage. For psychological parameters, his lowest score is a 3 on focus. This is notable by his Park City performance, where he had a top 3 speed by corner 6, but still finished with a 20 rank. This athlete has scored 4 on the rest of the psychological parameters. This athlete has created clear long and short-term goals. He attends training with a growth mindset and engages with the staff about his performance needs. The physical parameters is where this athlete scored best. He had a power clean of 85 kilos and a front squat of 100 kilos. His underhand med ball throw was 13.55 meters and a standing long jump of 3.05 meters. His 30-meter sprint time was 3.81 seconds, and he had an ice house push time of 4.78 seconds with a speed of 44 kilometers an hour. These numbers meet or exceed the BCS NSP standards. Notable is the recovery and performance on demand. With this athlete's inexperience, we saw inconsistencies in his races, notably the pushes in race 3 and 4. The tactical parameters are where this athlete has scored the lowest. This athlete is in his first year in the sport, and his curve and ice theory need to continue to be developed. His track awareness and recollection of his runs, which was his primary weakness, has improved over the season. We've seen this athlete begin to deliver high speeds in his second rounds of competition. This athlete has rented all of his equipment, including his helmet and sled. His only pair of spikes have taken a beating this season, resulting in a slower push later on in the year. This athlete has completed 95% of the runs available, totaling 70. None of the athletes in the learn to compete stage will reach 150 total runs this season. Because of his commitment to his run volume, he will be expected to improve all of his tactical scores by next season. For his technical parameters, this athlete has the ability to push in the top of the field with the appropriate equipment, including spikes. His finish time is still above the 2.5% back from the leader, but his steering application and form meet the expectations of the NSP. Taking the average score from all of the parameters combined, we get a total score of 2.89 for this athlete. When we look at the radar graph for these parameters, we can see the average of each individual parameter is 3 or higher. In the LTAD for the NSP, an athlete must have a score of the combined total higher than 4 to move into the next stage of development. Based on this graph, the athlete needs to improve their technical and tactical parameters to raise that total score to 4 to advance into the NSP LTAD. This is a reflection of how we score the athlete in the early excellence stages by these 4 parameters, while developing the whole athlete for long-term success.